It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. We talked with the defensive backs ahead of Ohio State's game against Texas. We're about 10 days out from that game now, number 1 versus number 3 in Ohio Stadium at noon next Saturday, Ohio State versus Texas. I feel like with the defensive back room, Stefan, this is the group that has the least to learn about in terms of what it means for week 1, thanks to the fact that they're playing a top 3 opponent, especially at cornerback, where we know who the starters are. And so now this becomes more of a conversation of where does Tim Walton think Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez are in relation to where they would need to be 10 days from now for him to feel comfortable putting them on the field.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that would probably be he doesn't feel too comfortable yet putting them on the field going against the number 1 preseason team. So I think we've gotten to a point specifically at corner where I think we have to remind ourselves of the veteran experience and talent you have on the front line and not maybe let your eyes wander a bit into what, the third guy, the fourth guy look like and what they were rated coming out of high school. So I think going into Texas, if you're someone who's really adamant about Devin Sanchez's impact on the team this year or Aaron Scott's impact on the team this year, week 1, I'd probably temper expectations a bit. It sounds like Davison or Jermaine are going to get a majority of the workload here, whereas Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott, I think they're, not to say this is when their season begins, but their season ramps up when Grambling and OU and the bye week, come around the schedule, right? Like that's when they can really kind of start to, get their season rolling, get their snap counts and see where they fit into the rotation, as early as Washington, or maybe as you look down the road, games against Illinois and Penn State and obviously Michigan at the end of the regular season. Like, I think you got to just kind of get past Texas. Like, it almost feels like it's its own like standalone game in the sense of your best 22 to 30 players are going to make an impact in week 1, and you're going to either win or lose against Texas. And then you can kind of start evaluating from that. It almost feels like Ohio State has a regular season game and then 2 like preseason games to figure some things out, figure out where guys fit. It feels like week one against Texas is like the last extension of the 2024 season, and then the 2025 season begins.
It's not even a regular season. They're playing a playoff game in week 1. It's just the loser doesn't end their season. It's like, well, okay, your season's not over, but you better not lose anymore. Can I bring up a different thing before we get back to the corners real quick? It's going to be a part of the point I'm going to make here, and the question I'm going to ask Andrew, but I just wanted to go on this little side mission real quick, if that's okay. I won't do it if you guys don't want me to do it.
We're here. Let's do it.
Okay. Andrew, you cool with this?
I think I have to be, considering
you're don't. If you say Steven, don't throw the ball over there, I won't throw the ball over there.
Throw the ball over there.
Okay, cool. I don't understand PFF's grades in their system. I don't understand it. I'm going to make a Jeremiah Smith point in a minute. I'm looking at his grades. First and foremost, the Oregon game was the most snaps he played in any game. Last season, it was 63. He also played 62 against Notre Dame, 60 against Michigan. That was the only time he played 60. He only played 36 snaps against Oregon. And I'm like, man, how come he... Wait, yeah, they were up 34-0. They didn't need him for the entire second half. That's why he only played 34 snaps. His season grade is 89.7. Do you want to make a guess how many times his individual grade by game was an 80 or higher?
I would say like 10 out of 16 games.
Right. Logically, if you think 89, like 10 out of 16, he probably got over 80. Andrew, what's your guess?
Probably, yeah. I'm just going to say 10 because I think that's about right.
Okay.
But you're going to tell us it's not.
It's 3.
Yep.
It's 3 games. Western Michigan, he was an 86.2. Purdue, he was an 89.8. He flirted with it against Michigan State. He had a 79.8 in that game. He flirted with it with Tennessee. He had 78. But in Oregon, 94.5. Those are the only games he was above 80. So if that's true, how does he end up with an 89.7 grade for the season if the individual 16 games, I don't know why, but I thought they just take each game, add it up, and then divide it. And that's how you get the season average. But I don't know what their grading system is. And I would love to talk with somebody about how. So for the season, his totality is almost a 90, which is superstar essentially. But his individual games are barely just average play. It's a little weird. Here's my point of why I'm making this.
His Michigan State game being 79 is crazy. It's like if you make 2 one-handed catches on the same drive and one of them is from the backup quarterback, like auto 100 score.
Yeah, he did have one from the backup quarterback. That's insane. I mean, the Tennessee game, he had 2 touchdowns in the cold, and it's a 78. They looked at that game and went, it wasn't enough. That's not great.
Well, and it's like, okay, yeah, Texas, 55.4.
That makes sense. He did not get the ball.
But here's the thing. Does it?
If we're grading him,
the balls, but it's like he was the magnet.
I think if you're grading him on the JJ scale, JJ wasn't a great blocker last year. He was I'm a freshman and I've never had the block before blocker.
Like if you put it like have you ever seen those like NFL dots that like ESPN has where it's like the NFL? It's like if you just put the dot on it and you're like, oh, this dude only had 1 catch for 3 yards. Okay, but I have eyes.
It's if you're using the JJ scale, then you can make a case that he should have caught that one ball, his first target, because he's caught more difficult throws before. But they don't use the JJ. It's not like they take JJ and then add an extra metric in. That's like the JJ metric. So because of that, it's a 55, while for everybody else, it's an 85. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. JJ played 63 snaps in Ohio State's first big game of the season as a true freshman. Granted, he had 5 games to lead up to that. 43 against Akron, 29 against Western Michigan, 32 against Marshall, 57 against Michigan State and Iowa. And he was also a bona fide starter from day one. So it's a little bit different. I want to start with Devin. I think this is the last time we need to put those two in the same sentence, because I do not think it is fair to even throw that into the stratosphere in a world where Devin might end up being like the number 5 pick in the NFL draft one day. In the first corner off the board. That doesn't change the trajectory of where his career is headed. I do not think it is fair that just because he looks like physically he's ready to play college football, there is a mental hurdle you have to get over for a guy who's from Houston, Texas, and is away from home for the first time in his life and is trying to learn how to be a college football player. I do not think we should say his name and Jeremiah Smith's name in the same sentence ever again. It's not fair.
They don't wear the same number anymore, so it's a lot easier. You're right. The scale of fairness definitely tipped, because I think not even to say, oh, well, Jeremiah Smith's year is repeatable. It's like, I think a lot of people even look at like a guy like Ryan Williams down in Alabama and they're like, see, freshmen, they don't have to be generational, but they can play and be really good. And I think even then you kind of start to remember like how rare it is that even like Ryan Williams did that, right? Like how rare it is to play as a freshman and not only play, but be really good. Like, even if you're unbelievable, it just doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith is just the anomaly. And I think Devin Sanchez no longer being compared to Jeremiah Smith is not a knock on Devin Sanchez, right? It's like, this is just how freshmen progress. This is how it goes. Like, if Devin Sanchez is not ready to play week 1 against number 1 Texas, or not ready to play in they have a bye week, so it'd be week 5 on the road against Washington in a brutal environment, like, it's okay. Like that's fine. That's why it was so big to get Davison Igbinosun back this year. And maybe that's kind of maybe we just got to a point in the offseason where there was a level of Davison Igbinosun fatigue, right? Like, he's been around so much, but he's not the star power of a Jeremiah Smith or a Caleb Downs. And Gillis is smiling like, okay, he has flaws in his game too. Let's not act like we're getting fatigue over no doubt first round pick. Like it's a guy who had 16 penalties last year. So I understand where some of that fatigue is coming from. But I think that you kind of forget that this is a guy who's been around and played a ton, and it's going to be coaches are going to be naturally inclined to say, hey, Jermaine and Davison, you're on the field before they start jumping to conclusions with a freshman.
See, but Andrew, you brought up Ryan Williams. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation for Devin, but the opportunity isn't the same. I think Devin Sanchez, as a true freshman cornerback, if the opportunity was there, could be every bit as good as of a cornerback as a true freshman as what Ryan Williams was as a wide receiver. Ryan Williams had 200-yard games last year. He had the Georgia game where he went nuclear in Western Kentucky. And right after the Georgia game, he started tailing off. Here's his yardage. Here's his numbers by game. Western Kentucky, 2 catches for 139 yards for 2 touchdowns because Alabama's better than Western Kentucky. USF, South Florida, 4 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. At Wisconsin, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. Georgia, 6 for 177 and a touchdown. Vanderbilt, 3 for 82 and a touchdown. And here comes the tail off. South Carolina, 4 for 32. Tennessee, uptick again, 8 for 73 and a touchdown. Missouri, 4 for 53. LSU, 2 for 29. I think it's Murray State or Mercer. No, this is Mercer. The random lackluster game the SEC likes to play in the middle of the season. Mercer, 3 for 36 and a touchdown. Oklahoma, 2 for 37. Auburn, 3 for 53. Michigan, I mean, we could talk about Michigan and Jeremiah Smith not having a big day. JJ got in the end zone. Ryan Williams had 3 catches for 8 yards against Michigan. He tailed off because he's a freshman. That's what you're supposed to do. Because he's a freshman who's 6 foot 178, not 6'4", 230 pounds with a 4.3 40-yard dash and a 40-inch vertical.
Also, to be fair, Bama did have passing issues, but you're right. Like, even Jeremiah kind of wore down, I think, as the season went along. I think you saw it a little bit where Jeremiah was like, you remember the national championship game? He's got his hamstring wrapped.
Yeah, he had a hamstring problem.
He's 18 years old going up against 22 and 23-year-olds sometimes. That wears on you.
And never did it before.
Mm-hmm.
College football had never seen a season this long. He'd really never seen a season this long. They don't play that many games in high school. They don't even play anything close to that in high school. So that's a long first year. That's why when they give freshmen who are redshirt freshman of the year awards, I hate it, because that's kind of the point. Is it's not just because you are young operating on the field. It's that you're doing all of this while also trying to learn how to operate in an environment you've never been in before. It's like when Ben Simmons won the Rookie of the Year. You're not a rookie. You've learned your routine and how to travel and how to be a pro. You just weren't playing basketball. So I'm trying to figure out what true freshman he could be this year. I looked at Chris Olave in 2018. He played 18 snaps against Oregon State, 16 against Rutgers, 24 against Tulane. So games where Ohio State just kind of ran the table. Nebraska and Michigan State were the next time we saw him, and that was in week 10 and 11. And he played 8 snaps against Nebraska, and he played 9 against Michigan State, because if I'm remembering correctly, Austin Mack was out with an injury. And then you started to see him come along. 23 against Maryland. He only played 17 snaps against Michigan, and look what he did in the Michigan game. But he only played 17 snaps. Yeah, he popped, but it's not like they had him out there for 60 snaps. They had him out there in a way that they could maximize what he could be while not leaving him out there to dry. Western 24, Washington 26. Okay, I looked at Garrett Wilson in 2019, the following year. He had a more of a role earlier on. He also early enrolled. Chris Olave did not early enroll. Florida Atlantic 29, Cincinnati 21, Indiana 31, Miami 32, Nebraska 26, and now here comes the uptick. Michigan State 36, they cooked Northwestern, so he only played 25. 28 against Wisconsin as their first really, really big game, because Nebraska was a fake big game. Maryland 51, that's when they threw him out there in a Big Ten game that they won 70-7. So they just gave him all these snaps. 37 against Rutgers, 28 against Penn State, 35 against Michigan, and that's when he starts making plays. 43 against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, 35 against Clemson in the semifinal. One other guy I thought about, because I think the guy I'm going to name now is probably perfect, and that's Jeff Okudah in 2017. The last time Ohio State got the number 1 cornerback in the country who was a 5-star from Texas, who ended up being the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. Jeff Okudah joined the room at the time when Marshawn Lattimore and Garyon Conley had just walked out of the room. So there are open jobs to be won. He did not win those jobs. It was Denzel Ward who was back for his final year, and you had Damon Arnett and I believe Kendall Sheffield was there in 2017 as well. So Jeff Okudah played when they blew teams out, but it was slow played. He played week 1 against Indiana and had seven snaps. Week 4 against UNLV, he played 27 snaps. Week 5 against Rutgers, he played 24 snaps. Week 6 against Maryland, he played 27 snaps. Week 7 against Nebraska, he played 17 snaps. Didn't play again until week 11 against Michigan State. He played 21 snaps. And then he played against Illinois. In week 12, he played 25 snaps. And then he played 4 snaps against Washington in the Big Ten championship game because I'm assuming something happened that he ended up playing 4 snaps. And then because Denzel Ward did not play in the Cotton Bowl that year, they put Jeff Okudah out there for 63 snaps. At the end of his freshman year, the last game of his freshman year, because a top 5 pick in the NFL draft opted out of the game, because remember when they still had opt-outs? And so Jeff Okudah played 63 snaps and set himself up to be a starter in 2018. Devin's not going to get that unless this season really goes off the rails and all of a sudden they're not playing in the playoff and Davidson Igbenogsen's opting out of a non-playoff bowl game. So he's not going to get a 63-snap Cotton Bowl. But do I think he can get the other snaps that Jeff Okudah got? Because how many big games did you hear when I said that when I ran off the list of the games Jeff Okudah played in? How many times did you hear they played the number 7 team in the country and Jeff Okudah played 28 snaps? They gave him enough to get his feet wet without throwing him to the wolves. And then in year 2, he took off. And I think that should be a realistic expectation for Devin Sanchez. Because at the end of all that, Jeff Okudah was a unanimous All-American in 2019. Probably, arguably, should have won the Thorpe Award, but they gave it to the LSU safety who now plays for the Browns, whose name is now escaping me. I just had it 2 seconds ago. And he was the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. So nothing changed. Our expectation for what Devin Sanchez will be has not changed. But asking him to be a generational dude, I don't think is ever fair to put on somebody because you never know how an 18-year-old is going to respond to their first season.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair way of putting it. I think that's just that the way Ohio State's schedule kind of sets up this year. It's going to be difficult to do that. So to be a bit patient with him, I don't think is a bad thing. You'll get to the end goal eventually. It might just look differently than it does for some guys. And also kind of the nature of that position, right? Like Jermaine and Denzel rotating the way they did last year was a byproduct of production and also, Denzel ended up getting banged up in that Texas game, right? Like Ohio State was playing a 16-game season. Not everyone was going to be healthy. The nature of, corner, as specifically as we look at the way, Davison and Jermaine are going to play it this year, doesn't lend itself to a ton of rotation. Now, do we maybe see some Jermaine and nickel, and maybe that does give an opportunity for Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez to get some snaps? Sure, but I think majority of the time you're going to see Davison and Jermaine playing those traditional corner roles, and that's just not going to leave a ton of room for other guys to see a field. I think the same can apply to Aaron Scott, right? Like, what's going to be interesting is next year is, if Jermaine decides to come back, between Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez, there's still going to be a guy who maybe isn't playing as much as you would have projected. And maybe there's another kind of year of patience that goes into that. So it's like there can be a patient game here that at the end you still get what you want. And that's quality play while guys develop behind the scenes. And eventually those opportunities will come.
Well, I think next year, if Devin is what we think he is and Aaron's going to be a third-year former 5-star recruit, if they both do what they're supposed to do this year, I think they can rotate 3 guys to 2 spots next year. But but again, that's a projection 12 months from now, when they're not playing Texas week 1. So it's like, I can say I think that all I want until it actually happens. It doesn't really matter. Jermaine Matthews did not play against Oregon, Andrew, and he only played 15 snaps against Penn State. And then he started rotating in after that. But if we're going to use that as the blueprint, and this is now I'm transitioning to the Aaron Scott part of this conversation, because I do not think that's the way I just talked about. Hey, it's okay if Devin Sanchez isn't Pat Surtain week 1. It's okay if he's not Derek. He might be Derek Stingley, but Derek Stingley also walked into an LSU cornerback room where not only was he good enough to start, they probably needed him to start. Devin, they don't need him to start. That's the key here. It's just because someone's good enough to do something doesn't mean they need you to do it in year 1. I don't know if that same logic should apply to Aaron Scott. We did a video, and Stefan and I especially, we kind of came to this conclusion that we don't think Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Mathis are coming off the field against Texas. We think this might play out the same way that 2023 Notre Dame game did with the defensive ends when Jack and JT didn't come off the field. Whether we're right or wrong, we'll find out in 10 days. But is it alarming that we're talking that way? Should we? I almost feel like we should be talking like Aaron Scott has pushed his way onto the field because he is a 5-star recruit in year 2.
I think that's a fair point. However, do you know who was ranked ahead? And maybe this is a false equivalency. I don't know. You know who was ranked ahead of Aaron Scott in the 2024 class? Aaron Scott was the number 36 overall player and the number 6 player at his position per the 247 composite.
So we're just talking corners?
No, we're talking players in general.
I mean, like JJ, Milan, Edric Houston.
So, well, that's the thing. To me, the question is the room in such a place that you can talk about it, not in the same light, because the receiver position is so ridiculous. Is it in a similar way at corner that we can talk about receiver? Because Mylan Graham was the number 33 overall player, the number 7 receiver. Aaron Scott was the number 36 overall player, the number 6 corner. And I don't think anybody's like sitting here freaking out, you need to, drink a beer and take a pill because you're panicking about Mylan Graham. I think we look at Mylan Graham and go, okay, take somebody off the field. Okay. With Aaron Scott, take somebody off the field. Like I say that like half rhetorically, if we're in a situation where Ohio State thinks that Davison Igbinosun can be a high level corner, I know that's hilarious coming from me, but like Steven, I know like you and I have had conversations with people like dating back to like last year where they were saying, the upside of maybe not even this year, but maybe next year is really, really high with Davison. And you have Jermaine, who started a game against Penn State as a freshman. Like if you're asking Aaron Scott to start over one of those two guys, I don't know if you're necessarily ringing the alarm bell. I don't know if it's a problem.
I don't think it's a start conversation, and I'm glad you used the receiver room because that's the
comparison.
Do I think that him and Mylan Graham are the same? No, because it's in relation to where you are on the totem pole in your. I don't know if we're 100% sure on anything. Is anybody 100% sure Mylan Graham is the next receiver who goes in the game if someone has to come out? That's the difference.
First play, Brandon Ennis tweaks an ankle. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can say with pretty much 100% surety that if something were to happen to Davison and Jermaine and they have to miss a snap, Aaron Scott's the next guy in the game.
Yes.
So from that, the need for that guy to be ready to go is significantly higher when you are the first guy off the bench versus, I guess it just depends. Some people think it's Bryson Rogers is wide receiver 4 right now. And I understand people love Mylan Graham. He had a really good spring. That was the first time he had went through spring. Given the way spring games are at Ohio State, we weren't going to see a bunch of JJ and Carnell and Brandon Ennis anyway. So there were a lot of opportunities to flash. But we have to remember when Carnell Tate missed the Iowa game, it was Bryson Rogers who went in the game as a starting Z that game. And it's because he's the guy who is learning multiple positions. I don't think Mylan Graham is learning multiple positions right now. But it's if we're not 100% sure that Mylan Graham is in the game, if something happens to a starting receiver, but we are 100% sure that Aaron Scott is the guy who goes in the game, if one of these corners goes down, that's why it's a little bit more urgency with Aaron Scott to get ready to play. Because while we don't think he is going, it's not why we don't think the plan is to play any other corners outside. Nothing screws up a college football coach's plan more than a tweaked ankle.
Isn't it funny that like some of our conversations just turn into like rotate or not? That is the question. Like we've talked about this on the offensive line. We've talked about this at corner. We've talked about this at the defensive line.
Yeah, because we cover a team where everybody who comes here on scholarship, their bare minimum ceiling is they're an NFL draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like that's always the conversation.
Yeah.
There used to be 85 guys like that. Now it's 105 guys who sign at Ohio State, understanding that their bare minimum ceiling is, I am one of the people taken in the 7 rounds of the NFL draft. Now their floor, I mean, G. Scott's at a training camp right now. Josh Fryer's at a training camp right now. So if you come to Ohio State, more than likely, you're going to at least make a preseason NFL roster. So when that's the thing you're dealing with, then yeah, it always is going to go into should they rotate. At wide receiver, we're asking should they rotate is because the guys who are sitting behind the guys also are first-round draft picks. They've got 2 5-stars sitting behind a former top 100 recruit and a guy who's going to be a 4-year starter in college football. So, of course, we're going to ask about rotation. Should we have expected – did you guys come into camp expecting at least one of these two guys to push for a rotation?
Not necessarily expecting, but I was open to the idea of it.
So it's not a big deal if it doesn't feel like Aaron Scott is in the conversation for week 1 as a former 5-star recruit. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to gauge what we thought the Texas game would look like versus where, now that we've talked to people and we are 10 days away from the game, what we think is actually going to be the reality.
I just don't think it's as much of a Devin and Aaron conversation. Like I genuinely think that maybe we've just downplayed a bit how good Jermaine and Davison are, because they don't necessarily have kind of these profiles that aren't talked about in that light. And they've kind of been around, because Jermaine Matthews, without being named a captain, is clearly one of the leaders on this team. Like Ryan Day has made that evident, let alone, Tim Walton and other players. And Davison too, like for all the penalties he had last year, and all three of us are in agreement that number is probably going to go down. It's hard to imagine it getting worse. I mean, he led the FBS.
It's literally hard to make it worse.
He led the FBS with 16 coverage penalties. Like that number is going to go down at least to like 12 probably. I don't know, which is like 25% better, which is still pretty good. But like even amid those,
I liked his answer you take it for what you want, but his answer for why it was happening after he watched film it wasn't so much that he was holding on the guys, is that he wasn't getting his head back looking for the ball. And I know people are going to hear that and read that and say, well, I saw a lot of holding. Right. Because if you don't look back, you can be physical as a corner, but when the ball is in the air, you need to turn your head and look for the ball and then play the ball. If you never turn your head to look for the ball and play the ball, you're going to keep doing what you were doing when you first got your hands on the guy. Yeah. That is where, especially back shoulder throws, it became an issue, because he's facing the guy, holding on, wrestling with him, when the wrestling match should have ended 4 yards ago.
Yeah, it's a technique thing, and that's something he's working on. I mean, he talks about wanting to be a first-round pick, and obviously that's a huge part of it. And being a first-round pick is a difficult thing to do, but like he came back to Ohio State with one thing to clean up in his game. So like we can't just sit here and pretend like that's impossible to do. So I think that there's part of this too. But the point I was trying to make is like Jermaine has stepped up. He's a huge leader for this team. It's going to be hard to take him off the field. Davison had the most coverage penalties in college football last year, and they didn't take him off the field. He wasn't the corner who was rotating. So, like, Ohio State, I know Stephen and I joke about a lot just because Andrew's so high on him, and I know fans are very vocal sometimes about their disappointment with Davison, but, like, this coaching staff does not think that way, very obviously. So, if Davison wasn't coming off the field last year, maybe we shouldn't have thought about a world in which he's doing that this year, because why would he? And if Jermaine is making all the proper strides, and he's an all Big Ten caliber guy, then why would they rotate him a ton either? So, like, I think part of it for me is like, sure, Aaron and Devin, it's very exciting, but this coaching staff obviously loves the top two guys that they got. So rotating isn't really something that's in their vocabulary, because they don't really think it needs to be. Like we'll get to Devin and Aaron when we get to Devin and Aaron next year. Like they'll be there.
Sure.
What if
and that's why my reasoning for rotating isn't out of a place of weakness. It's not because I think the guys that are behind the starters might be better. I think they might have higher ceilings, but that's just life. It's from a place of strength. It's from a place of what if you keep guys fresh, because you got 4 guys, right? It's a benefit, not a detriment.
You can still get there by November.
Yeah, for sure. This is not listen, I fully expect one of those 2 guys to be in it. Just cause a rotation. Right. By the time we'll play Penn State.
And we were never projecting them to be rotating in week 1 against Texas. When we did our lineups, like Andrew had talked about the idea of Jermaine moving to nickel. And I think Steven, you and I were both like, I like it, but I don't know how much we're going to see it against Texas.
Yeah. I wasn't open to the nickel thing. You're right. I was open to, if Ohio State plays 65 defensive snaps, either Aaron or Devin can play 15. I was open to that. I don't think I'm open to that after what I heard today. Am I open to, by the time they get to Penn State, Aaron Scott's playing 15 times? I am 100%. But I think the way I heard people talk about things today, this is the Oregon game, and Jermaine Matthews isn't getting on the field. And Jermaine Matthews' name this year is Aaron Scott. I don't know. And it's not a negative. It's more of a 5-star recruit, year 1, plays special teams and has a role to get his feet wet in garbage time. Year 2, after he's gotten adjusted, let's go play football. And that is not where Aaron Scott is in week one. And maybe some of that is a result of the week one opponent versus Aaron Scott getting a chance to play Ohio and Grambling State the first couple of weeks and get into a rhythm. And then he plays Texas and you can throw them and you're ready for that. I can't tell how much of it is because of the week one opponent versus how much of it is where Aaron Scott is in his development right now, that they're not, it doesn't seem like they're comfortable doing it in week one. And maybe it's a bit of both of those things.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, I don't know if, like, I think when we talked about the offensive line rotation, it was more like, well, what if Tegra can't hold up for blah, 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 right? Like,
I don't know. I don't think that. I think they just think they have multiple guys who can play on the offensive line and they're going to play more.
So just humor me for a second. What if I'm right about Davison? Like if Davison just is that dude and it's like, yeah, this is the 18th overall pick in the NFL draft because he's long, he's physical, he's aggressive, and he cuts down on the penalties and he makes a few plays this year. What NFL GM doesn't want that corner on their team, right? Let's pretend I'm right about how high I am on Davison. Would it stun you guys if Jermaine Matthews is a borderline first-round pick, top 40 type of player and can leave for the NFL after this year if he wants? Like if he plays to that level. And the reason I ask those two questions are because, like Stephen, I think, was trying to get to, what if Aaron Scott is at that level of development? Like this doesn't have to be neither Aaron or Devin is ready to play versus the number one team in the country. But when you get to Drew Aller and Penn State on November 1st, he'll be ready to go. Okay, that might not matter. Like, what happens if you've got one first round pick on one side and you're like, oh, we're not taking him off the field. That dude can hold up for an entire game. We don't want to take him off the field. And then you've got another dude who in Jermaine, who is kind of in the same ballpark. And you're going, we just have 2 top 50 NFL draft picks at corner. And sorry, Aaron, you're great. We can find sub packages for you. Your development has you at that level, but you're just not at the level of a top 50 pick right now. And we've got those 2 guys right here.
Correct. But why does it only have to be 2 is my point.
Like, what are you saying that with Aaron and Devin?
Yes, like I think we have consistently had conversations about rotating from as if it's from a place of weakness, which is even the language of what if Tegra can't hold up? What if Tegra can hold up? They just have multiple people that can play on the offensive line and they're going to play all of them. This is why I keep trying to preface it with this is not a negative on where Aaron Scott's development is. I'm trying to figure out how much of it is because they're playing week one and they're going to stick with the 2 guys. What you're saying, what if they just have 2 first-round draft picks and they're just not taking them off the field? Okay, what if they have 3 first-round draft picks? Because you know what they had in 2016? And the guy who used to be in my role here was asking Kerry Combs, why are you rotating at corner? Because we got 3 first-round draft picks. You know what they did? They played Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore, and a second-year Denzel Ward all together. They played them 3 guys through 2 spots and just rotated those bad boys. So if Aaron Scott, over the last 9 months, had taken such a leap that we have seen 5 stars take all the time. I'm not asking a dude who's rated in the 800s to do this. This is a guy who I already think is going to be a good football player. If he had gotten to a point that in week one, as a second-year guy, let's just say he had gotten as good as a cornerback in year 2 as Carnell Tate was a wide receiver in year 2, where he's a no doubt, that's a starting level football player for you. You know what we'd be talking about right now? Oh, Ohio State's going to play 3 cornerbacks against Texas. Jermaine Matthews, Davis and Igbenos and Aaron Scott, and have no issues whatsoever. That's why I'm not saying it's a negative. I think it's just because they're playing Texas in week one and they don't want to throw Aaron Scott out there, who has never played a meaningful snap of college football, into a situation when they don't have to. And I am banking it being that while also acknowledging that maybe it's the latter. Maybe Aaron Scott is not quite there yet, but they're not probably going to play him week one against Texas. And if they felt like they could play him week one against Texas, we wouldn't be saying, oh, they're not going to take Davis and Igbenos and Davis and Igbenos off the field. Jermaine Matthews and Davis and Igbenos. I think I said Jermaine Igbenos. That's a heck of a player. But that's all I'm saying. Like, do we think is Texas shaping this, or do we think Aaron Scott's genuinely not ready yet?
I think Texas is shaping this. I think the conversation would be different if it was.
If Texas
Get
was
ready,
3.
fellas, here comes the Akron Zips.
Okay.
Like it was last year, right? Like, hey guys, you better watch out. Here comes, the Bobcats of Ohio, which maybe, but like Ohio's if that's the week one game, I don't think this is the conversation. And I just think it is so much based around the fact that the number one team in the country with the preseason Heisman favorite is about to be it's not about to be, it is what you are practicing against right now. You are practicing against or for Texas's offense. And there ain't, with all due respect to like the MAC or the FCS, ain't time to screw around when Texas comes here. So
if Texas was week 3, do you think that you would be anticipating they rotated against Texas, knowing that they had 2 games to see what that rotation?
A bit more, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it would have to look good against,
of course,
the other opponents. Like maybe CJ Hicks is an example. Like we saw him sometimes get snaps against the Northwesterns or the Purdues and didn't look great,
right?
So like you weren't ever going to do that against Michigan. So if it looked good, yeah, I'd be open to it. Yeah, I just think the dialogue, the way this coaching staff has talked about things is no longer like off-season mode. The way they talked about, younger players and different looks and things like that in March and April and even the first 2 weeks of camps, like it's no longer that. Like it is, Texas is on the schedule. Like it is full go Texas. And that's we're no longer in off-season mode. Like you have to think about this game like it's just a big time game that's not necessarily week 1 in the sense of like going into, I'm trying to think of like, there were so many injuries on the offensive line that dominated the conversation, but it was like going into Oregon, like early in the season, we weren't talking about like, hey, is this young guy going to rotate in and get snaps and be a factor? Like we were talking about like, how does Ohio State beat Oregon? This, and this had to happen. So it's like, how does Ohio State beat Texas? Sure, the last 7 months has been fun to think about Aaron Scott and his development. Ohio State's best option is Davison and Jermaine on the field for most of the snap. Week 1 against Texas. And that's just kind of how I view it right now.
I think if they were playing Texas in week 3, I would say that they would be rotating cornerbacks against Texas.
And we could even we could say this about Washington. I think Aaron Scott will play a decent role against Washington because I think you'll get to see in the 2 non-con games and the bye week if he's ready to go. And I think he's going to be ready to go. That's why I'm not like necessarily too worried about like him not progressing as we projected. Like he's going to get there. It's just not week 1. It'll be week 2, 3 bye week, and then week 5. Like it's fine.
And to add to that, like especially at corner, I think there is an element of like, all right, we'll let him play a lot against Ohio and Grambling, and those are the 2 games. This is for Devin too, right? We'll see what those guys got, and then maybe like Stefan was saying, okay, then you play Washington and then you play Minnesota. Those are the games where you might see a little bit of, okay, now these are Big Ten receivers. Washington's got this 4-star players on the roster. Like let's see what you got, because the one thing that I think you want to avoid is having a situation where like Aaron or Devin plays against Grambling and they kick butt. And then, oh no, you have to pull a Jermaine and one of them has to start against Penn State and you don't know. I think ideally you would like to see them kind of build up to something over the course of a year. So I don't think it's just, hey, play him against Ohio. And I'm not saying you were saying that. I don't think it's just, hey, play him a lot against Ohio or Grambling or whatever, or play him in blowouts. I think it's, hey, let's get through Texas and then we can kind of set together a development.
I think it's the Texas thing too. I just also don't think it's an unrealistic conversation and be like, hey, 2nd year 5-star, do we think he's ready to play football? Because we see that all the time. There's Devin Sanchez turning into Jeremiah Smith is unrealistic. If it happens, you got to let that happen before you put that on somebody.
Yeah.
Aaron Scott being ready to play meaningful snaps for you in year 2 is also not unrealistic. It's just they're playing a top 3 matchup in week 1 and you don't have time to go, I think this guy's ready. You have to almost know about it. And so it's shaping the way we're viewing what this cornerback room might look like against Texas versus what it will look like the other 11 games, which is why I think he's this year's Jermaine Matthews, where he's not going to play against Texas, but the other 11 games, you might sprinkle him in there anywhere from 15 to 25 snaps, and they're perfectly fine with that. That's cornerback. They have 4 dudes, and Jordan Woods, who's a true freshman who just got here. It's not a big room. So as much as, they're not going to play anybody but Davidson and Igbenogson and Jermaine Matthews, all one of them got to do is tweak an ankle real quick. And all of a sudden, one of those guys are in the game. And so it is fair to be like, hey, are these guys ready to play? Okay, let's take a break, and then let's talk quickly about safety and what we think it's going to look like when they play Texas here on Buckeye Talk.
The Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle. Plans starting at just $16.99 a month.
No one will ever break us apart.
Catch Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts: The New Avengers on Disney Plus.
You can't escape the past.
Alien Earth on Hulu.
This ship collected monsters.
And Final Destination: Bloodlines on HBO Max.
Death is coming for our family.
The Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle. Plans starting at $16.99 a month. All these and more streaming soon. Visit Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle.com for details.
Ah, Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant.
Whoa, that's refreshing.
And a 9.5 plus pH for every way you move.
I did take a Spain class today.
Restoring like a pro. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. That's why you need Shopify. They'll help you create a convenient, unified command center for whatever your business throws at you. Whether you sell online, in-store, or both. You can sell the way you want, attract the customers you need, and keep them coming back. Turn those what-ifs into why-nots with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer. That's shopify.com/special offer.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
And we're back on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis talking Ohio State's defensive backs after talking with them on Tuesday. True or false? Ohio State's starting back secondary group. That's a weird way to put that. Ohio State's starting secondary group when they play Texas will be outside cornerback Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews, Caleb Downs at nickel, and then Malik Harrison and Jalen McClain as the deep safeties. True or false, Andrew?
So there was a lot of names. So it's McClain and Hartford, deep safety, and then Downs at nickel is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's probably the case. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to be the first snap. I think Lorenzo Styles will be the nickel in the first snap with Caleb at safety, and I'll say Malik Hartford as the other safety. But I think the combination you said is what we'll see the most often.
Why wouldn't it be the first snap?
Why would it be?
I love that energy, Stefan. Keep that up. Why do you think that's Stefan? I don't know. Why not?
Okay, yeah, we can have a conversation.
I walked away from talking to secondary, thinking to myself, I think the coaching staff has more faith and trust in Lorenzo Styles than maybe we often give it credit for. And I'm open to the idea of let's put Lorenzo out there. Let's see how it works. And if we feel it's better to have kind of Caleb in that slot or that nickel spot more, then we can go to it. But I think they trust Lorenzo more than they trust Malik and Jalen out there together.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think Lorenzo Styles is very good in a specific role. I also think they want Caleb Downs as close to the ball as often as humanly possible. And nothing does that more than putting him at nickel, especially if you think that you have co-starters in Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford who can essentially lock down those two other safeties. Part of the reason Caleb Downs played nickel the entire second half of the season, it's just we didn't call it that because they still had Jordan Hancock. The reason he was able to do that is because Lathan Ransom and Jordan Hancock gave them the flexibility to be able to do that. And I don't want to just diss Bryce West in this conversation. It sounds like that's a battle between Bryce West and Lorenzo Styles right now. But I just think the combination of wanting Caleb Downs near the ball as often as possible and in as many plays as possible, mixed with, it sounds like Matt Guerrieri, if he had no choice but to start Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain at safety because Caleb Downs didn't exist, he'd be like, all right, cool. See you guys on August 30th. I don't know if the same confidence was put into Lorenzo Styles and Bryce West right now. And I think part of that is because I think Lorenzo is very quality in a specific role, and Bryce West just got the nickel 9 months ago, and he's still trying to learn his way around that position. I think what's more likely is when they go dime, Lorenzo Styles is the guy who comes in as the dime while Caleb stays in that nickel role.
Steven, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Let the inmate run the asylum for a minute. Percentage of Ohio State's meaningful snaps this year. So, let's take out, all due respect, the Grambling game, the Ohio game, blah, blah, blah. The meaningful
but
snap
those
this
snaps
year.
will still be meaningful for the first quarter and a half.
That's right. So the second half of the Grambling game, the second half of Ohio, yeah. So the meaningful snaps this year, when Ohio State has number one defense on the field, what percentage of the snaps do you think are gonna include McLean, Hartford, and Downs this year?
85, bare minimum. No, that's 80.
Okay, that's a high number, but I don't know if you're wrong.
Yeah. Outside of situations where, and we're just talking base defense, not when like teams throw like a 4 wide receiver look or a 2 tight end look where they got to go with certain packages. If we're just talking base defense, 80% of the time. There's a lot of excitement about Malik Hartford, Jalen McLean. And Caleb is playing Caleb down. Davis Igmanosin says he calls him Coach down 80% of the time. I think I'm looking at Lorenzo Styles' snaps from last year. He played 162 snaps. I think he goes up to maybe 250. And that's just because maybe he's a little higher on the depth chart at this point. 62 snaps, and 128 of them came in the slot. And the other bulk was 21 was at free safety, and that just might be because of an alignment conversation. While Caleb Downs played more snaps in the slot than the guy whose primary role is the slot last year. So I'm essentially saying Caleb Downs' breakdown last year was 339 in the box, 333 at free safety, and 160 in the box. I'm essentially saying the box stays the same. If he plays the same amount of snaps this year, the exact same number, 339 in the box, 293 at free safety, and 193 at free safety, and 360 in the slot. So he just plays more slot than he does free safety this year. And it's because they have so much faith in Jalen McLean and Malik Hartford, who Matt Guerrieri even said there are some differences because they're not the exact same player, obviously, but there's nothing radically different to where you can only do this thing with this guy and only do like one can only play in the box, one can only play free safety. They are interchangeable in the way that Lathan and Caleb Downs were interchangeable for that free and strong safety roles, which means that Caleb Downs can be Jordan Hancock, but like the Caleb Downs version of Jordan Hancock.
True, but you also were able to do everything. You were able to do a lot with Caleb even last year, and he was technically safety.
Yeah,
so I think I'm saying even when Lorenzo's playing the nickel, you can still do whatever you want with Caleb.
But I don't think Lorenzo can do that other stuff. That's it. That's the flexibility part of Jordan Hancock being able to do.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think Lorenzo's as good as Jordan Hancock.
Right. That's the other part of this because the slot stuff for Caleb didn't happen until they lost to Oregon. Pre-Oregon game, so that's the first 5 games of the year. Caleb Downs was in the slot 6 snaps the first game, 3 snaps the second game, 11 snaps the third game, 3 snaps and 4 snaps the next 2 games. And then against Oregon, he played 10 snaps in the slot. And then he played 7 against Nebraska, 10 against Penn State. Against Purdue, he played 7. And then the uptick really came in the playoff, though. He was around 7 to 10 for most of the season. And then in the college football playoff, when they had a month to prepare, he played 19 against Tennessee, 16 against Oregon, 14 against Texas, and then 22 in the national championship game against Notre Dame. So I'm saying that number from the playoff is just going to be his norm. And if you need someone, if your third safety has to be a guy that allows you to do stuff with Caleb Downs, I think more than likely you'll find that in McLean or Hartford than you will with Lorenzo Styles right now. While Lorenzo Styles is probably a good slot corner, which is why when they go dime, that is the guy I'm expecting to be on the field because the dime is essentially just another cover guy.
I don't hate that in terms of the snap counts, but so the number against Notre Dame was 22. Let's say that's what number is against Texas. Okay, I'm saying the first one will be one of those.
It's just
because I can, because you don't know what the starting lineup is going to be. So I don't know what the starting lineup is going to be. None of us projected CJ and James Peoples to start on snap 1. What if they do?
What do you mean? I projected James Peoples to start on snap 1.
No, but 2 running backs?
Oh yeah,
I said James and CJ.
Yeah, I did that last year with Travion and Quinshon, and I was horribly wrong. And then they spat in my face by putting that T formation out there.
You know what? The funniest thing about this Caleb Downs conversation is I think we all agree that Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith are probably the best offensive and defensive player in the sport. Like I think we're all on the same thing with that. But like the thing that makes this so funny is that imagine if we were like, hey guys, if Ohio State gets in trouble at running back, JJ could just slide to running back. Like that's kind of what we're doing with Caleb because
not really because
I mean look if very genuinely if Ohio State gets in trouble with like injuries at linebacker this year, Caleb Downs could do that.
No,
Like
no.
you could bump him down to the box and he could play linebacker.
I don't think he could play linebacker for a full game.
Maybe not a full-time role, but he could play it if you need it.
He still can play. He can play all three defense safety spots. That's all it is.
He could do what? Yeah, he could do anything.
We joke about that, like, oh, Caleb Downs is the answer to everything. I do not think positions that you start to get into the trenches a little bit, he could excel because he's not that big.
No, he's like 6 foot 210.
He's not 6 foot. I'm just gonna tell you right now, he's not 6 foot tall.
I mean,
stand next to that man. Both of you are taller than him. He's just bigger than us because he's a football player. He's not 6 foot tall. The comparison is like JJ is gonna play some in the slot. We might see him line up at Zeal. They're gonna move him around so teams can't just take him away. Caleb is going to be everywhere from that perspective, but there's not going to be a situation where we're looking out there and he's legitimately playing linebacker. I want to make some clear about that. The thing that, dude, he's not. Do you understand who Ohio State starting linebackers are this year? They're 6'4", 240 pounds. And even Peyton Pierce is 6'3", 230 pounds. Their linebackers are edge rushers 10 years ago.
Yeah, so maybe you bump the edge rushers down, or you bump the linebackers down to edge rusher, and then you bump Caleb 3rd and 13. Don't you want Caleb patrolling the middle of the field? I don't hate that idea.
Yeah, but you can do that. You can do that at safety. I have this picture saved on my computer from the Texas game, and it's 4 levels of defense: defensive line, linebackers, Caleb Downs, safety. Linebackers a whole different deal, or especially in the Big Ten. That's a different conversation. But he's going to be on his own plane for sure, but it's not going to be the linebacker plane. It's going to be the Caleb Downs plane. I'm just saying. Julian Sands, the starting quarterback. Put Caleb Downs at nickel. That's all I got. That's what I learned today is Stefan is going to try to be technically right here, which is fine. What I learned here today, though, in all seriousness, though, is Caleb Downs is probably going to play nickel simply because they want him near the ball as much as possible. And it sounds like they have full trust in Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford, which is allowing them the opportunity to do that. While at cornerback, there's going to be what they do against Texas versus what they're going to do against the rest of maybe their schedule. Anything else that people learned on Tuesday?
I like the way that Davison talked about the technique, and I like the way that Jermaine talked about Davison's technique. Gives me confidence that the penalty numbers will maybe go down more significantly than we thought.
Andrew, did you leave today more confident in your bus?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you look for is alignment in some way. And I think you saw that with Davison. Like, Davison went before Tim Walton, I think.
He did.
And Davison, like, people were asking him questions. He was like, I got to get my head turned around. That was the big problem. And, it's the grabbing thing. But, like, I think about it a little bit like, what happens if, you start to drop your groceries when you're walking into the house? You kind of panic and just like drop your hands down and just try to scoop everything up. So like if the bag's ripping, like, okay, well, if you avoid the bag ripping, then you don't need to grab. You don't need to kind of just fall down and grab everything like all in a bear hug. You don't need to do that. So him saying that, and then Tim coming out and pretty much saying word for word kind of tells me that they're in alignment and they're, kind of on the same page as to what needed to change and probably like what has changed. So, I do feel confident in Davison. I really hope that Davison has a big game against Texas so I can take a nice little victory lap on the pod. I don't care. You think you think it's one victory lap and then I'm done?
That is literally the epitome of Tennessee walking out in the cold with their shirts off.
Well, that we don't need to litigate that again, but I don't know. Davison has like an interception or like a big interception against Texas or something. I'm going to talk my talk.
Davison had a big pick against Penn State.
Yeah,
he did.
And he still led the FBS in penalties.
Yeah. Things to be true.
Did he have a penalty?
He did have a penalty. He had the penalty that set Penn State up in a position where he had to intercept the ball like that.
It was a real arsonist fireman situation on that.
Averaged one coverage penalty per game. You could probably assume he had one.
Does he know you care about him this much?
I have no idea. Somebody like while we were doing this podcast, somebody tweeted at me and said like they were quote tweeting another reporter that said like Davison Igbinosun came back to be a first round pick, and somebody quote tweeted it and said like he had to do it for @Andrew. Like, so I like people know, like people that listen to this podcast.
I know that people know. They listen to us.
I don't know. I don't think Davison knows. I kind of don't want him to know.
No, he needs to know. You
I don't think
him.
I don't think I want him to know.
You should tell him you're pulling for him.
Have you ever seen that? This is like the second time this week I think we're going to make a SpongeBob reference, but like, have you ever seen the episode where they're selling chocolate bars and SpongeBob goes, "Be nice to the customer," and they open the door and Patrick just says, "I love you." Like, I don't want it to sound like that. Hey, Davison, you should meet Andrew. He really likes you. And it's like, I love you, Davison. I'm not going to do that.
It's you saying, hey, I think you're good, and people are doubting. You're just being honest with the guy. The fact that you don't have a relationship with Davison Igbinosun and you've spent 3 years talking
like
about him
one-on-one once, but we have not had like a sit down. Hey,
enough.
brother, I have been pining for you for like 18 months.
That's not enough. You need more. You got to tell him. Tell him you care. Maybe that's all he's missing. Maybe you telling him, hey, I told the world you're going to be a first-round draft pick is the thing that unlocks.
Don't make me look bad.
Yeah, that's the thing that unlocks Davison Igbinosun. I do too, though, seriously. I think he might have a Damon Arnett year where it just didn't click. Damon Arnett was very, very handsy, and then 2019 showed up, and for whatever reason, he just miraculously learned how to keep his hands to himself and had the best possible season he could have. Now, the Raiders did too much and made him a first-round draft pick, but the point still stands that Jeff Hafley got the best out of Damon Arnett at the tail end of his career, when for most of his career, he was what he was. He was a handsy cornerback who could best, he was a decent cover guy, but at worst, he was getting penalty after penalty after penalty, and then something clicked in 2019 for him. And an elite defense at a time when they needed something to click for him. And he still had 7. No, he only had 4 penalties. Damon Arnett only had 14 penalties in his career. Davison Igbinosun had 16 last season. So that's what I'm saying. I think there's some parallels between him and Damon Arnett and what could happen for him in 2025. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That's the cornerbacks. We got one group left, and that's tight ends. We'll talk with them as you're listening to this. We're in the Woody talking with Keenan Bailey and the deepest tight end room of the Ryan Day era. And 10 days from now, Ohio State plays Texas. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.